Hello, welcome to BBVA Stadium. My name is Chris Bils alongside Victor Araiza. But of course, you already know that if you're following the Striker Texas on Twitter. We're out here ready for another showdown, a Copa Tejas showdown between Austin FC and Houston Dynamo FC. Victor, I've been lovingly calling it all week. The battle for worst in the West. Who's
Well,
going
you're
to
not
take it? Who's
lying.
going to take the title tonight?
Yeah, the battle for the wooden spoon too. Maybe I mean they're kind of
Oof.
working their way down there in the MLS standings. Obviously, two teams on two different trajectories as far as what this season has become. The last time we were looking at the last time these two faced off. Austin was pretty much around the same place. Houston, on the other hand, they were right in there in the playoff picture and now have fallen out completely. So obviously, you've seen it from this end. I think it's a little bit of more of a worrisome thing as opposed to what Austin's going through in an expansion season.
Yeah, totally. I mean, you say that, but I think that there's plenty of Austin fans that expected more from this team this year, and I think
Absolutely.
that's been the storyline. I think the last few weeks as they've realized that just getting home and just getting some better players on the field didn't necessarily turn things around for Austin FC. But as we get into that, I know Houston has had its own turmoil this season. Finally letting go of GM Matt Jordan, and I know you wrote a little bit about this week. Why don't you take me through a little bit of just catching maybe some Austin folks up and people that haven't been following as closely
Yeah.
about the situation with Houston and kind of where you see that search headed as we get closer to
Yeah.
playoff
Well,
time in the
that's
off
a
season.
key decision for this Houston club. It's going to decide maybe years down the road. I mean, I don't think anybody would have thought that the Matt Jordan signing would have lasted 7 seasons, and
Right.
that's potentially what you're looking at here. And I think what you just said with Austin, where it's they thought they were just going to come back home, and then the results were going to kind of follow. Houston thought the same thing at
Mm,
BBVA Stadium, and it didn't work out, and that's kind of what sort of rushed the decision. I don't think anybody expected Matt Jordan, the general manager, to have his tenure ended,
right.
pretty much in the midst of trying to get back in the standings in the playoffs. But there's some obviously a list of some potential hirings
Yeah.
on the
And I
strikertexas.com.
want you to hold some of those names for me. We're going to get deeper
Right.
into
We're
that.
no, we're not going to
Yeah,
give the house
yeah,
away.
yeah, yeah, yeah. We'll get deeper into that later in the show. But just maybe give folks a little bit of a primer if they're kind of you know looking to catch up on some things that they're heading into the stadium tonight or just sitting at home. What are some stuff that they'll find on the Striker Texas from the last week or so from you?
Right. So we got, like you said, we got a potential GM hirings for Houston. Some maybe ex Dynamos that could be in the picture as well. There's some comments from the owner Ted Siegel,
Hmm.
and of course, we have coverage of the upcoming town hall meeting with Ted Siegel with some of the Dynamo fans coming up this week. So that's the type of content you can hear. What the owner's saying, what has Dynamo fans excited, optimistic, in spite of this. But it's not just a GM search that could be going on, could be a coaching
Mm.
search as well, and that's why the rest of the season is important. Tab Ramos and the rest of and his players, they're under
Especially the
scrutiny. They're
players, I would think that there's a lot
right,
of guys probably playing for jobs
yeah,
right now.
and that's the way that we have to look at these games. In spite of the what's always said, everybody still has a chance. The magical we could always come back into the playoff picture and that kind of thing.
Yeah. So I guess from the Austin side and some of the stuff I've been writing about this week, I was out in Vancouver. Had a great little respite myself, but Austin FC did not necessarily get to take in the sights, and they didn't. It sounded like they got to Border Patrol in not the best of moods. I talked to the same agent the next morning who was kind of laughing about kind of the sour taste in the Austin players' mouths as they were heading back into the states, but. Josh Wolf, rough one for him. I thought, especially coming away, kind of losing some faith from some fans that maybe were in his corner even leading into that match. And I kind of broke it down step by step. He had a really interesting press conference, I thought, on Thursday, where we pressed him a lot about the subs that he made in the second half. Of course, if you weren't watching the game, he made the decision 15 minutes into the second half with them leading 1-0. Really played a really good first half, maybe one of the best we've seen from them all season. Of course, they only did score the one goal Sebastian Drusi with the header, and then he made the decision to switch. He was seeing a few things. Vancouver was getting back into the game, and he decided to pull off John Gallagher and put in Johan Romagna, go to five in the back, and really it sort of went downhill from there. Of course, Matt Beasler went off with what we later learned was a concussion. He was off the pitch when Vancouver equalized, and then Freddie Kleeman came on, and Johan Romagna, sort of tripped over himself or over the turf, and things kind of, like I said, went downhill. So if you want to check out sort of step by step a little bit of why Josh Wolf still stood by his decision there, thinks it was the right move to go in the five at the back. He said that the structure was good, it just was the execution that was off. And I kind of lay out, I actually took a bit of a PolitiFact approach for anybody that
Yeah.
gets deep in the weeds there. But I got a couple friends that do some political coverage, so I was putting Josh Wolf to the truthometer. So if you want to get deep in the weeds on some Josh Wolf quotes and some tactical analysis, that's your go-to. You got, I think you've got enough time to read that before the game starts. I hope so, at
Yeah,
least. I
certainly
don't know if
should
I
have
went too far over.
a couple. No, should have a couple hours before the game starts. And there's certainly plenty of things to talk about this game. Like I said, I think like you said, guys playing for jobs, trying to prove themselves. I do think Tab Ramos is in the same type of scrutiny here in Houston. There are fans that have maybe started to start thinking about the hashtag or using it more often, the tab out hashtag, right? And that's kind of the picture here in Houston. The same kind of issues, right? Substitutions coming in certain games, choosing some players over others. And I think it brings up the argument: is it the coach or is it the players? Is it simply?
Right.
And I think in Austin, you have a little bit more of a benefit of the doubt, right? Because you have designated players, you have guys, big money players that Houston wishes they had, and I think
Right.
that's kind of always what brings that argument.
All right. Save the sob story. We'll get to
All
get to that in a little bit. I'm gonna we're gonna both express our arguments for why we think that the team that we cover is the worst in Texas. So stay tuned for that one. But let's get a little bit into the last time these two teams faced off at Q2 Stadium. The first trip for Houston Dynamo to Q2, and it was a rough one for Houston. They had a red card early on. I think Darwin Seren got sent off, and then you can check the highlights out as we're looking at them here. But here's the red card, and that really changed the match. I think Austin obviously went up 1-0 after that. Houston fought back, I think, twice. I mean, Austin eventually went up 3-1.
This was the big game for Pochettino too, right?
It was. I mean, I'm still scratching my head that they gave him that first goal, but I do think it definitely helped his sort of trajectory for the season. And he got MLS Player of the Week on that goal, if you can believe it. They it did go in off the post and off Matias Vera, right? And then they ended up giving that to him, and he scored the second a little bit later. But I guess this was in the midst of a string where Houston has continued to not win,
right? But at this point, they were still tying games, right? I mean, it was I think before this, their last loss was at Seattle at the beginning of July. They lost this game against Austin, and that kind of sent them. We recall this was a midweek game on a Wednesday, so I think it was Minnesota right a couple of days later. Like you mentioned here, the red card, so they were without Darwin Seren for that match. Then obviously later on in the game, Tyler Pasher gets injured, so that's another player they had not with them up in Minnesota. And that's kind of, it was not just all right. If they're tying games, at least they're kind of a point here, a point here, a point here, but they're kind of staying in the mix. At this point, it was just kind of going like, all right, now they've lost the second one in a row. They sort of got back to ties here at home a little bit, which is not good because this is where they expected to pick up 3 points.
Right.
And then it just, the
that.
last two games.
I love that moment with Tyler Pasher putting his fingers in his ears, really playing to the crowd, which I think is he's having. Tyler Pasher, obviously went to the Gold Cup, has had a role to play for Canada, but that was a fun moment, I thought, at Q2 Stadium.
Yeah, well, these days he looks like he's playing for Hospital FC. He can't seem to stay on the field, which has been the biggest thing with him because he started off great at the beginning of the year. He was getting assists. I think he's still up there among the leaders, goals and assists for the Dynamo. So, but I mean, that's just been the story. I mean, it's just you can find this or that, but at the end of the day, you got to figure out a way to win. I mean, they aren't the only team that has these problems, injuries. International call-ups. All these things are problems that teams all around MLS have. The good teams, like we mentioned on the MLS, the Striker MLS podcast,
Right.
right? The Seattle's, the Atlantas, the LAFCs, they find a way to pick up results in spite of that, and that's been a problem for Houston, no matter who has been the coach in the past decade or so.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, if you just go back to that match, I remember coming in, wondering if we were just going to see one goal, and let alone we ended up seeing five that night. The red card, the fight back from Houston, bad moment from Brad Stuver in the back that led to a goal and some nervous moments there toward the end. But I thought it was a nice start to a rivalry. I mean, I guess, does the fact that both of these teams, are sort of the outside looking in, you could maybe even make an argument that the playoff race is done for them. Does that take some of the sting out of this rivalry, or does that make it, the stakes even higher? Like you're saying, some of the Houston players are playing for jobs. Austin's playing for pride at this point. Do we see the rivalry take another step up
Yeah, no, I
tonight, you
think
think?
definitely the rivalry matters for the people that follow the team. That's a big one, and it's not the same as the rivalry with Dallas, right? It's not a hatred. It's not Houston uh, against Dallas in an ugly way, right? It's Houston versus Austin. I think has a bit of a friendly rivalry, of a friendly approach, where it's you want to be the better team. You don't want to. You do want to have those bragging rights, but at the end, you're not. Uh, you're not overly hating the other team, right? The other team's
Right.
players, the other city. I mean, there's a lot of people that go from Houston, stay a weekend or so in Austin. I'm sure there's people in Austin that come down here for Houston for work, so I think that builds into it. But there is, I mean, from the Austin side, obviously you've seen it, but this week from the Houston side, the Dynamo supporters, and in spite of this building being empty for the
Mm.
last couple of games, for the last couple of years, they've kind of done a call for action, right? I
Hmm.
mean, Austin's obviously come in with the pomp, the circumstance, the fans in the stands, the sellouts, and Houston doesn't want to be left behind. At the end, there is some pride here with the fans that are here. It's not that people don't want to come out to the stadium because they're not soccer fans or there's not a soccer culture in Houston. It's a deeper line problem where it's just it's fatigue, it's just apathy, it's being in a way a protest towards the organization. That's the reason people don't come out to games for this weekend.
Yeah.
There's been the call to action. They don't want to get shown up by the traveling Austin fans.
Totally, and I mean, we saw that earlier in the summer when Austin went up to Frisco for the first time against FC Dallas. Of course, Josh Wolf decided not to put on some of the stars, which was sort of the controversial decision that night. But a lot of fans made the trip. We're expecting slightly fewer tonight, but still a couple buses and some fans going to enjoy Houston, the food, the drink, the whole deal for the weekend here. And I think that's the thing that I hope that people sort of take away as they come in here is that it's not like this stadium is in a bad part of
Oh,
town, or
right, right, smack dab in the middle of
it's a
downtown.
great spot. It's one of my favorite really venues in MLS for that reason, is that you can go out, grab a bite to eat, you can get a few
Right.
drinks in you before heading over to the stadium. I think one time my friend and I found like a little backyard barbecue or something.
Oh, and this
uh
this area's picking up. There's a
yeah.
barbecue place right down here next to the stadium. Just a block away. That's kind of like building up. So that's going to be a good spot. Kobo's Q in the future. There's another barbecue spot just down the road that's
Oof.
also being in construction. So this stadium being built here has only grown this area, kind of giving it resurgence. And you've seen it. There's already some bars here, some restaurants. It's a good day for a Sunday. It's only going to grow, and you just wish that the team here could kind of capitalize on the market that's being built.
Totally, and we'll get into the barbecue battle maybe here toward the end. Maybe we can get a little bet in. I still think I owe John Arnold for a bet that we made earlier in the season, so I still owe him, I think, some style switch. But we'll see what Victor wants to put on the line here. But those are the positives from Austin and Houston, the smoked meat. But the soccer has
That's a
not
big
necessarily
positive.
the soccer has not necessarily lived up to it. I don't know if you want me to go first or Victor should go first here, but let's give a little sob story. There's a lot of fans kind of feeling sorry for themselves.
Yeah.
Let's lay out the arguments. Why is the Houston Dynamo the worst team in Texas?
Because there hasn't been the support, right? There hasn't been the adequate support financially. There hasn't been the adequate support with boots on the ground, right? Because there's things, even if, as a business owner, there's things you can do in spite of money, right? The handshakes, the going out and meeting people, getting out in the community, going out to local leagues, to schools, all those things that hasn't been done here in Houston. This is no longer Houston's team. I'll put it that way. It isn't, and that's where they've lost people. That's and when people want to buy into this team, they kind of shut them away, right? I mean, even in the midst of the season, one of the big problems too is the pricing for next season. I mean,
Mm.
prices are going up, but the results keep coming down. So, where do you kind of want to spend your money, right? That these are some of the deeper lying problems in Houston. Like we mentioned, there's the town hall next meeting with the owner of the Houston Dynamo, Ted Siegel. Some fans are going to get the chance for a first time and maybe forever to actually talk personally to the owner of the Houston Dynamo and express some of these concerns and maybe had a chance to be bought back. But there are people that support the team, that have supported the team from the two championships back in 2006 and 2007. Unfortunately, you don't see it when you see MLS broadcasts.
Yeah, I mean, let's what have you seen so far from Ted Siegel? I think that's the question that I see some fans sort of asking you is what should we why should we believe in this guy, right? Why should I go renew
Well,
my season tickets now?
he's
Yeah.
saying the right things. I mean, he's saying what you want to hear. Obviously the summer transfer window was too short. They want to put more thought into
Hmm.
a big name player. They don't want to get a player like, and he didn't mention it by name, but he basically like an Higuain that's just coming in to have a smoke, right, and run around a few laps. I mean, they want to make it
Maybe
a
literally.
yeah. They want to study these kinds of decisions, and but I think this next offseason will show us everything we need to know about Ted Siegel. Is he the owner that he's certainly saying the right things, but so many people have said the right things throughout the years.
Right.
People now down here, especially in Houston, Texas, they want people to walk the walk and show that they're willing to bring some of these fans are, and these fans have the money, clutched in their hands. They're ready to spend money on the Houston Dynamo if the right product is on the field. This season, it hasn't been the case, right? It's been like any other season in recent memory, where it's kind of just taking, for lack of a better term, MLS rejects from other teams, right? The guys, the misfits, right? The unwanted, and that's what this team is. So that's why when you go through the roster player by player, maybe it's not completely the team's fault. Record is the record says what you are, right? I mean, so
Right.
maybe we should have expected this from the very beginning.
Yeah, and I think that just to put a bow on Houston here, I'll let you have the final word. But one thing about this club, and I was thinking about it too when I was up in Vancouver and really kind of experiencing that city for what it is, talking to people about the Whitecaps, and the fact that people really care about it. I mean, I had a couple of conversations, with people that I wasn't even sort of seeking out. That I think one of them went to games in the NASL days. I know there's a lot of soccer people here in Houston. A lot of people show up for, when Manchester United's in town, when,
Right.
national teams are in town. When I was walking up here and seeing, some advertisements for a couple of Liga MX friendlies that are going to
Like
be
right
in the
outside
stadium.
BBVA Stadium, these bars. I mean, these are European clubs have their supporters
and,
groups in these
and so
bars.
I think the feeling from me and everybody else that follows this league is that this team is a sleeping giant, or should be, right? It's in one of the biggest
Absolutely.
metropolitan areas in the country. They've got a great stadium location. You can argue whether the stadium's great or not,
They're in
and
the
a lot of
mix
that
for
comes
the
down to
World
the
Cup
weather.
host cities.
Yeah, and they're in the mix for World Cup host, and that's not too far down the road. When can we stop talking about Houston Dynamo? I mean, I'm sure you're tired of that phrase, sleeping giant, and just talk
Yeah.
about them as a team that's really pushing the boundaries of what this league can be. I know that's like a stretch at this point,
Yeah,
but why not, right?
all it takes is the owner to put the right product on the field, right? The right people, coaches, players, and I'm not just talking about the first team. I'm talking about youth development as well. As soon as they start going into the community, finding the right players, extending partnerships instead of building bridges. That's when this club is going to
Right.
be able to become that that giant can awaken, if we put it that way.
Yeah, and I guess I'll go take the Austin side of things now. You're talking about support and people not showing up. I mean, people are showing up for Austin FC, but it's almost like you wonder when you're there and you're watching this crowd that I heard some people in the front office tell me that they've multiple people have come up to them. I'll have a story later this week in the Striker Texas talking about the fact that 96% of season ticket holders are returning to Austin FC, which is
Yeah.
a pretty healthy sign for them. But I feel like we're all kind of sitting there and like, this can't actually be this good, right? Because the product on the field is
I've been covering MLS
is
too
not
long.
not keeping up with the atmosphere.
Right.
And I think that is a little bit of, I want to say, I mean, I guess unfulfilled promises, right? Like
Well, and
Austin
it's the
FC
first
came in,
season as well.
yeah, but they came in with it setting the bar at the playoffs, and maybe that was an ambitious goal. But the thing is that you know, Josh Wolf is a first year head coach, and this roster did not have a center forward on it when the season started. There's a lot that been a lot lacking, I suppose, on the field for this club.
No,
Um,
and look, and if you're a fan and wants to win, you might be looking at Josh Wolf, right? And not
mm,
necessarily because it's his fault, but
right,
but for the ownership. I mean, you might. I mean, I know if I was following Austin FC, I'd say, look, it was a nice plan, right? But and there certainly were going to be growing pains, and maybe that's where you're saying maybe playoffs shouldn't have been promised. Maybe it should
right.
have been announced more as a, this is going to be a project. We're not necessarily going to make the playoffs in the first year. It's going to put, but if you sell right away. That's a problem that's been here in Houston. If you sell something too high right away, I mean that
That's
people are expecting it. People are expecting you to hold your word. And there's fans that have followed the game that are not just all of us. I mean, yeah, they're Austin FC fans, but they're not all of a sudden soccer fans, right? And they know that what this roster is pretty good. They got some high priced players. Maybe it's just a more experienced coach
mm.
that could do something more with this team.
Yeah, I think there's probably some merit to that. I mean, I don't think there's any denying that the Vancouver match is maybe one of the best examples of it. That the coaching at times has cost this team some points and cost them a chance to be a little bit higher up the standings. But also, there's some holes in this roster that have just been glaring. I mean, they got Sebastian Drusi in, but it was after this team had already sort of plummeted through the standings, and
Right.
he's looked really really good in the moments, but we haven't yet to see him on the field with a true number 9, and that's Musa Jite. Maybe we see that tonight for the first time. I don't know if he'll get a start, but at least would like to see 45
Right.
from the big guy up front.
But that's another thing we were talking about early in the year on the Go to the Archives, the Striker MLS podcast. Where's the number 9 going to
I
come from
know,
on this
yeah,
team, right at the beginning of
yeah.
the year? And it's obviously that. I mean, it's obvious Austin has the resources, so it's not. It's just something that chose not to be
I
addressed.
guess I think that's the disappointment that fans are feeling right now, and I can certainly empathize with it. Is like the disappointment of feeling like this should be better than it is, and how long am I going to put my effort, my time, my money into this club without getting for lack of a better word, a return on that on that
Yeah.
investment?
And
And
the
I
big
think it's
thing
coming.
is
I think it's coming, but
right.
I do think there's an argument to be made that this has maybe been the most disappointing of the 3 Texas teams this year, just because of the expectations were set so high for what this club was going to be right out of the gate.
Yeah, the only thing I'll add to that is, and it goes back to your point about the renewed season tickets. Austin FC right now, Austin FC games are the place to be in Austin.
They are,
right, and
yeah.
that's a big part of that. Once that stops being a destination, for the locals, once that shine kind of goes off, I think that's another thing that
And that's why I think this club should be feeling more urgency than maybe they
exactly,
are,
and
because you can't. Once you, and Houston's the perfect
yeah,
perfect example of this, but once
this
people
as an
leave,
example.
once people walk out that door, it's hard to get them back in.
No,
So you've already got people begging to come in the door. The last thing you want is a stream coming back out the other way and telling them, hey, this is not what you thought it was. Not that that's happening yet, because 96% speaks for itself. People are having great experience when they come in. They're starting to learn more about the game, which I think, we start to learn more about the game. Hopefully they're coming to the Striker to learn a little bit more about the game, and hopefully they have plenty more years to learn and to get better and to grow with this club. I think that's maybe the fun part of being an Austin FC fan, is that you're starting maybe from the bottom and you get to watch the growth of a young head coach,
right.
The growth of a young team.
Right, but you got to keep watering that tree.
Yeah,
so
it's got to get better,
fruit.
right? It's got to keep getting better instead of taking like little baby steps and then steps back. So
I mean, that's been a big part here in Houston. I mean, can you imagine being gifted a 2-time MLS champion?
Right. Yeah.
And it's just nurturing that, tilling the soil, making sure that people want to keep coming back, and you don't just neglect it. neglect the
Mhm.
product, right? And that would be my warning for Austin FC.
Totally, and I mean, and who better to give that warning in my eyes? But let's talk about where Houston's at right now with this GM search. We teased it earlier in the show. Victor's going to give you some names here and sort of some thoughts on where he thinks what the next leader of this club should be. And I assume that some of that's informed by what the previous leaders haven't been the last decade or so.
Right. Obviously, before Matt Jordan, Dominic Kinnear was kind of that GM role in a way, right? He was
Hmm.
kind of the eye for talent, and maybe the president Chris Kennedy was the one that was in charge of maybe the administrative side of things. But it's a different MLS, right? And then when they created that GM role, they were aiming to dive into that. Went with somebody unproven. I think we have to say it that way with Matt Jordan, who was in Montreal. For as much as his experience is said, I mean, I don't think necessarily he made all those deals, right? Or closed the door on all those deals. So, what would you want to bring in now for Houston is somebody, obviously, Ted Siegel has said himself, Dynamo owner, with MLS experience. I do think, if you can bring an ex Dynamo, right, like a Craig Weibel or a Pat Onstad, somebody that ties it back to that championship team, that only helps you out even more. But those guys obviously are the ones with Dynamo ties and MLS experience. Obviously, you can dive a little bit deeper in on the strikertexas.com. That there's some guys around the league that are running out of contract.
And
But
some
I
guys
think,
from outside the league maybe that have picked up
yeah,
some
and that's
experience.
that's another way. I mean, I think it kind of depends where you want to go, but I think the areas to address, obviously, the MLS product, the talent on the field, finding players around the world because it is a world market
Mm.
where you can find value and you can hit on players more than miss, because that's where this team has also lost money over the years. I think missing on transfers, and the biggest thing also, if you're gonna not spend as much on players, or even, I mean, regardless of the case, the fact is in today's MLS, you have to have a good academy. You have to nurture that side of the game, and that's somewhere where they have to address it as well. So a GM that can address all those areas, or I mean, if it takes two people to, a GM and a sporting director, like some clubs do it, however you want to brand it. But at the end of the day, they need more soccer-minded people in this building. That's the way I put it.
Yeah. A lot of talk about 2022 with these two clubs. A lot of talk about woe is me and the sky is falling. But there's still 3 points up for grabs tonight,
Tonight,
Victor. There should be a nice atmosphere here in BBVA Stadium, and some players who hopefully will be fighting for it. What do we expect to see? Maybe give me one key from the match. You can go read our preview that you and I wrote together, but give me a little bit from that. Give me a little snippet, a little bit of a key matchup for me.
yeah, I think for Houston, it's obviously the fight, and it's easily said, but I mean, these guys have essentially been lifeless as a team over the last couple of
Mm.
games. I mean, they've been dejected. Um,
Do you think they feel like this is the best chance? I mean, you look at the
they should,
standings.
and
Yeah.
it's been, when honestly Minnesota was a good chance for them to get back into 3 points, and they let them walk over them. Portland, who had never won in Houston, they give them an early lead. So I think it's just having that attitude from the beginning, going out and exerting the position that this is your home. Uh, you know, you may you may not be the best team on the road, but you come to Houston. I mean, this is the mantra that's been said, right? Under Tab Ramos and under the current leadership, is if you come to Houston, you're gonna have to fight hard for those 3 points. You're gonna have to basically pry them away. That hasn't been the case in these last few games, and that's why they're 16 winless.
Definitely. I think from Austin's perspective, it's coming in here and playing for 90 minutes because we saw it last week. This team, and really, if you're just a casual MLS fan or not a casual MLS fan, because if you're flipping around ESPN Plus, you're not a casual MLS fan. But if you're flipping around on a Saturday or a Sunday and you come across Austin FC or a national TV match and you watch them for maybe 20 minutes this year, you'd think, oh man, this team should be pushing for the playoffs. This is a good MLS team because they play well for stretches, but it doesn't result in enough goals and it doesn't last for 90 minutes. We saw it last week in Vancouver. They put together a really nice first half, finally made the pressure pay. I thought it was really a positive sign that they were able to get the goal in before halftime. And then you come out in the second half, you change tactics. It doesn't look like everybody's on the same page. And I'd just like to see Josh Wolf go with an 11 that he feels like is the right way. Emphasize a style and come out here and really take it to a Houston team that, again, is kind of searching for its own identity and confidence. So we'll see
Yeah.
if that's the case from Austin, or if they're maybe sort of a little down in the dumps and maybe a little bit disjointed after a really frustrating trip out to Vancouver.
Yeah, I think and I'll ask you because we certainly talk about it on the podcast. The issue down here is, you know what? Houston actually has a couple designated players.
Mm.
One of them's a defender, so he can't score goals, and then the other one, barely has over 200 minutes this year. In the case of Austin, I mean, do you feel like the designated players have lived up to it?
Sure. I mean, in the case of Sebastian Drusi, which has only been here for, I think he's had 5 starts maybe at this point, and he's looked the part. I mean, he when he's been in the 10, he's turning, he's driving at guys, he's scoring goals. He's got 2 so far, but he's been on the end of some assists. He's been starting some good attacking moves, and I really want to see what he looks like next to a true number 9 running off the back of Musa Jite. Like I said, I hope we get a few minutes at least of that tonight. But on the other 2 guys with Cecilio Dominguez and Tomas Pochettino, with Tomas Pochettino, I think he's a DP in name only, and that's maybe sounds a little harsh on the Argentine, but you look at his salary, you look at what he was brought in to do, and I just think that if this team's going to be what the front office and the ownership says it's going to be, at some point there's going to be a bigger name that's going to come in, and if he's your 3rd or 4th best player on the team, I think he's a great 3rd or 4th best player, but I don't think he's necessarily a front runner. A guy that should be at the front leading the pack is Cecilio Dominguez, and he's done that, in one-off performances, but not throughout the season. And that's from what I've been told by Club America and Independiente fans. That's sort of the story of his career. So they should have known that coming in. But
right.
Again, you've got some Sebastian Drusi and giving his effort and really leading from the front. And I think that you can kind of have an enigmatic player like Cecilio Dominguez. So the pieces are starting to fall into place. I'd like to see them all perform, and they combined all 3 of them on that goal last week. So again, that was positive signs. The last 30 minutes, not so positive signs. But who's going to be coming out of tonight with some positive signs? Victor, you want to put a little wager on this? What food do you want to offer me? I'm all for. I'm like we got a new dog, Lily. She will only respond to treats. I'm kind of like that. So give me something good, and we'll put a little bet on the line here.
I'll have you. You know what? You can have your pick between some Houston barbecue, or we can do some Mexican food here in Houston.
Ooh,
You'll be surprised.
I'm always down. Oh, I mean, I think Victor will be able to show me some good food around. So I'll go the Mexican route. You can take me and show me. I mean, I heard that your family's pozole is also. We talked about that on the podcast. So maybe that's the offer.
Take it to my house.
I would love to be welcomed into the Araiza home. And I'll go the same for you. I mean, we can go tacos or we can go barbecue. Breakfast tacos. I know you love breakfast, so maybe we combine the 2.
There you go. We can do some breakfast in Austin.
Okay, but give me a pick. What are we feeling tonight?
You know what? It's tough because every time I say Houston's gonna do it, they come out with performances like the last 2 games. But you know what? I'm gonna give the home team the benefit of the doubt. I do think they have to seize the moment, because I think if they don't win here, I mean, that winless streak might go on to the end of the season. Yeah. But I'll put some faith on the home team.
All right. I like it. We're gonna both get called homers here, but I did think that I was really excited to see Carrasquilla coming into tonight, and obviously he pulled up with a look like a hamstring. I know he's questionable, but I can't see him turning around off that international break and playing tonight. I think that's a big blow for Houston. So I'll go Austin 2-1. I just think that they're due for a good performance, and I think that they probably had a little bit of a come to Jesus moment during the week. They don't have Matt Beasler tonight, though. I think that could be a key.
That might be a plus,
especially if Houston's kind of running at the back line. It could be a plus, I guess. But that's gonna pretty much do it for us. I've got a 2-1 victory for Austin. And Victor, did you give me a scoreline? What are you feeling?
You know what? I'll do. I did a high scoring one last time. I think I'll do one here. I'll say we do 3-2 again. This time Houston takes it.
All right. And if you're looking for food recommendations, for you're bouncing around, hit us up on Twitter at the Striker Texas or at Victor Araiza at Chris Bils. I'm not so good for Houston Rex, but Victor can hook you up there. And we'll see you guys in the stadium tonight. 7:38 kickoff. It should be a good one here from BBVA Stadium. Austin against Houston in the Copa Tejas. Everybody enjoy their evening and have a good